What is a VO2 max test? What can it tell us about training, and will this help my Hyrox time? Today I am getting a VO2 max test done because I have signed up to a training camp that I'm going to be doing at the Altitude Centre in London to see whether 6 weeks of training at simulated altitude will affect my aerobic and anaerobic capacity and hopefully will improve my Hyrox time. So the first stage of the experiment is to measure my VO2 max and what's called my ventilatory threshold 1, known as VT1, and ventilatory threshold 2, known as VT2. So the test we performed was a graded treadmill test, and so you basically start at a really easy like walking pace and then increase the speed every 3 minutes until you can't go any further. So it's like until your absolute max. As we progress through the speeds, we can learn from what's happening with my breathing and my heart rate. And in my previous video, I talked about the different training zones and how they relate to the to your heart rate. If you haven't watched that, you can go and check that out because I kind of explain it all there. But basically what the test is doing is giving us the kind of precise points at which metabolic changes are occurring in the body. So starting with VT1, this is the first point where my breathing kind of significantly increases. What's happening here is the body is going from using fat as a fuel source to using carbohydrates. So all day, every day, you use oxygen to burn fat, and that is your fuel source to live and breathe. But as we start to increase the exercise, the demand for energy starts to get higher. You start to use glycogen or carbohydrates as your fuel source. So this is what's happening here, and we can use it as a marker to determine what heart rate your zone 2 training should be at. So in my case, it was 151 beats per minute, which has improved because the last time I measured this was around 2 years ago and I was at around 138 beats per minute. So that's really good for me because it means I can work harder before tapping into those carb stores and producing lactate. As the test progresses, each stage the speed goes up, my heart rate would climb up, and then it would kind of settle a little bit, plateau, and then obviously speed increases and it would go up again. During this intensity, my body is producing lactate, but it's able to clear it. So it's hard, but it's kind of somewhat sustainable. And then eventually we reach what's known as VT2, which is where your breathing pattern really starts to break down, and it's right around your lactate threshold. So this means my body is producing lactate faster than it can clear it, so it is unsustainable. And then a few moments later, we reach VO2 max, which is the maximum amount of oxygen I can breathe and use during exercise.
Strong, nice. Everything you got, come on.
So as you can see, it kind of sucks, but that actually wasn't the end of my suffering, because in my case, as part of the experiment to improve my Hyrox time, I was given 90 seconds rest before performing a 1K time trial. And this was kind of to simulate similar conditions to Hyrox, where you are running under fatigue. And the reason for doing this is it's just another measurable that we can look back on to see if after 6 weeks of training at altitude, simulated altitude, if that improves. So what can all of this data tell us about how I should be training? Well, here's a few clips from our conversation where Hannah explains what I can be doing in training based upon my results.
Your VO2 max is, from this test, 59, which I think is a good indicator and representation of how hard you're training at the moment. From what you said, your training volume is there.
Yeah.
And this is obviously, you know, you're in that top 1 percentile of your kind of demographic and in the sense of a VO2 max test. Mm-hmm. Your VT1 and VT2 are here for us in heart rate. So you've got 151 for your VT1. That is kind of what I was expecting to see.
Right. Okay.
From what you explained of, you do your long run, you do your low intensity. That's how you train your VT1. Is you build that. If you view your kind of training as a pyramid, and that's your base.
Yep.
That is your aerobic base. That's what training at that lower intensity gets.
Yeah.
Therefore, right at the moment, you've got that really wide. From how little you train peak intensity, in that sense, that's why that's like that. So in the comparison, you've got a high VT1 for a VT1, obviously that's in relation to a VT1. For a VT1, that's a high BPM. That means you've got a really big, strong aerobic base, which tells me exactly what you said before we started of the volumes there. What we now need to do is see that higher intensity increase. It sounds like you've started to do that already. Your max heart rate should be hypothetically 194. What you kind of need to be doing is now training the upper end so that in Hyrox, like it is, you're running that much fatigue, you're working at that intensity. They're the heart rates you're working at. I don't think you'd be in zone 2 for very long at all.
No, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is kind of what I wanted to discuss, because I spend most of the time at like 165 heart rate.
So if you have a look
during
here, that's not even getting you out of zone 4.
Okay. Yeah.
So that is zone 4 essentially. For Hyrox, that would be.
So, in which case, so as I'm building towards a race, should I be trying to do longer bouts in zone 4 or go all the way to zone 5? In terms of because I think when I'm doing like a sort of a run through of the race, I'm at that sort of zone 4 throughout, and very rarely do I get to zone 5.
So what I'd say with that is, for a lot of athletes, we come in and kind of giving them an indication towards their type of event. I would never say to a marathon runner, spend more time running marathons, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah,
I would never say, go out off the back of this conversation and do all of your training at zone 4.
Yeah.
Just do race simulation. Just do exactly how you're going to be in Hyrox.
Yeah.
Because actually, like you've got that really strong aerobic base. That's what you want. You need to be training all elements of that pyramid. What I'd say for you is you definitely need to be training more of the upper end.
Okay.
So towards your heart rate max, and therefore pushing it towards what could potentially be your heart rate max, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the test there, I can find the exact number, but it was something like 180 something, mid 180. You've still got 10 BPM to play with there, okay?
So overall, VO2 max is a good indicator of your overall cardio fitness. Now, although that can be increased, a big proportion of it is genetic, whereas those thresholds that we talked about are highly trainable. And I also think that they are going to be the biggest kind of game changers when it comes to Hyrox. And this is where I see the biggest value in the getting tested, is what you need to work on. So you can kind of test these in other ways by doing a really long run and doing some strength work, doing some high intensity work, but you won't really know what's going on. And this is kind of just giving us some hard data on whether I need to do more endurance or more high intensity. So what zones do I need to be working on? So I'll be doing more of that high-end stuff as I prep for my next race, and I'm going to be using the Altitude Center to help me with that. So make sure you are subscribed, and I'll be keeping you updated with how I get on with that. And as always, if you want more guidance on how to incorporate some of these methodologies into your training, go to coactiveperformance.com, where I have training plans and coaching options available to you. Anything else, you can reach me on Instagram at WoodsyWorkout, where you can find plenty more tips and tricks on all things health and fitness. Until next time, peace.